If you came face to face with Jesus and you could ask him one question, I wonder what it would be. Perhaps it could be to do with the current situation that we find ourselves in. It could be to do with suffering, proof of his existence. Why doesn't glue stick to the inside of a tub? What does the future hold? It can be whatever, it's your question. But I want to tell you the story of a guy who got to be face to face with Jesus and he got to ask him his one question. This story takes place in Mark's account of Jesus' life in chapter 10, verse 17. And here's his question: what must I do to inherit eternal life? Why does he ask that question? I wonder if you've ever asked a question like that, not just about the immediate future, but actually future beyond the grave. Well, today we're going to see how Jesus responds to this question about the future. It must have been quite the scene. Jesus was headed towards Jerusalem. He knows that he's headed towards his death. And suddenly this young man comes running up to him, falls down before him on his knees. And as Jesus looks at this man, he sees that he has such promise and such potential. And we're told that as Jesus beheld this man, he loved him. And yet this story ends in tragedy, because actually we're uncertain about the future of this man. The heading of this story in some translations is the rich young man. However, this is more than a story about money, because this is a man who has great morals. He knows right from wrong. He's great moral wealth as well as great financial wealth. Yet he realises that no matter how good he is, that there's something missing. He feels a sense for more, to look to the future, even ponder this concept of eternity. And I believe he's thinking, what am I missing? Jesus says, I could tell you, but I'd rather show you. And so Jesus then picks out the very thing that is preventing him from following Jesus. Listen to verses 18 and 19. Why do you call me good? Jesus answered. No one is good except God alone. You know the commandments. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not give false testimony, you shall not defraud, honour your father and mother. The man answers that he's kept all of these since he was a boy. Jesus continues. Jesus looked at him and loved him. One thing you lack, he said. Go sell everything you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me. He wants to get rid of everything that makes this man so comfortable. The man weighs up the cost of following Jesus and walks away. Some versions say that he grieves, like he really wanted to follow Jesus, but he just couldn't. His wealth was an addiction. Now, one thing that's really easy to miss in this story is that although it seems a good thing that this man keeps all the commandments that Jesus lists, we can forget about the first two commandments, which Jesus actually doesn't mention, but are from which the others flow, and they are, have no other gods before the one true and living God, and make no idols. You see, we are made for God. In his book Counterfeit Gods, Timothy Keller suggests that the human heart is an idol factory, that often humans take good things and we turn them into God things. He says this about our tendency to have idols. If anything becomes more fundamental than God to your happiness, meaning of life, and identity, then it's an idol. This man wanted to hold on to wealth. And maybe because of what it helped him with, maybe his status, his place in society, honour, even his immediate future. See, we see this struggle with money right now as we see kind of celebrities and rich folk trying to look to the government for help with their money during things like furlough, and yet people say that they should be using their own money first. There's always an issue about money. For the man in this story, the possessions that he had were more important to him than God. He chose not to give it up, all up for God. Like he did lots of right things, but he chose not to give it all up for God. He bowed his head, but not his heart. He wanted heavenly treasures, but he wasn't willing to give up earthly ones. It's interesting that this guy calls Jesus a good teacher. And what's Jesus' response? He says, why do you call me good? No one is good except God alone. And here we see that the man is right, because the Bible shows us that Jesus is God. He's God in the flesh. You want to see God? There he is. The man had the wrong focus. He thought it was all about him. What must I do to inherit eternal life was his question. And one thing that we're all learning in this time is that we aren't in control. Yes, there are some things that we can't do right now, but one thing that we're never going to be able to do is get ourselves to God on our own merit. It's not about what we do. It's about what God has done through Jesus. And what is offered is a hand of friendship, a welcome to be part of the family of God. The problem is that we think that we're good enough without God, or too good for God. But how good we are really depends on who we compare ourselves to. See, we love the comparison game. Great example for me is that my parents, whenever I grew up and did an exam in school, they didn't really care about my own result on its own. They cared about how my friend did, so the question was always, how did Andrew do? Because they wanted to be able to compare my result with his. We love to do this. We find people that we think that we're better than. We maybe even find people that we think that we're worse than. But if we really compared ourselves with God, we would see that none of us are good. We need God to step in and sort us out. And you see, in relation to our future, the future impacts the present. What's next impacts right now. See, Jesus is clear about the future. He says, follow me. No matter your situation right now, look to the future and ask yourself, if there is an eternity, how am I going to get there? Jesus here in Mark 10 of the Bible tells us, follow me. So no matter your immediate future or the years to come, let eternity mark your steps.